On my 15th birthday, the Empire's greatest hero knelt before my father, not to marry me, but to reject me. As hot tea and blood dripped from his brow, my childhood dream shattered. He said I deserved better, but his cold eyes whispered a different secret. I walked into the blizzard, only to be caught by Julian, the kingdom's most dangerous rogue. "Why cry for a stone?" he smirked, "when you can play with fire?" Now I'm caught between a hero's lie and a villain's truth. The snow fell heavily on the day of my coming-of-age ceremony. It was the day he said he wanted to break our engagement. The grand banquet hall fell deathly silent. Before the entire court, he knelt ramrod straight before my father. His head bowed and said in a low, firm voice, "I know I am not worthy of the princess and wish to dissolve our engagement." In a fit of rage, my father smashed a teacup from the table onto his head. Scalding tea, mingled with bright red blood, streamed from his forehead down to his temple, dripping onto his collar. "Father." I quickly tugged on my father's sleeve. "Father, please calm down." I knew it wasn't that he was unworthy of me, but that I was unworthy of him. Adrian Yang came from the Yang family of Huayin. His ancestors included 3 empresses, 4 chancellors, and 6 great generals. Theirs was a truly prestigious and aristocratic family. If my mother hadn't been close friends with his aunt, Consort Yang, this engagement would never have been mine. I should have known my place. I ask the emperor to grant this. I am willing to accept any punishment. He lifted his head to look directly at my father, his eyes filled with resolve and defiance. Suddenly, I wanted to give up. What was the point of forcing someone who didn't like me? But why did my heart ache so much? My father laughed, a laugh born of pure fury, but I knew he wouldn't truly punish Adrian Yang. With chaos on the borderlands, he had only just returned a decorated war hero. Punishing him now would surely dishearten the soldiers, so it was up to me to give everyone a way out. I knelt beside Adrian Yang, suppressing the bitterness rising in my throat. "Father, if General Yang is unwilling, then let it be." At my words, he whipped his head around to look at me, clearly astonished. I turned my face away, refusing to meet his gaze, and simply knelt there quietly in the great hall. Whispers filled my ears from all around. The noble ladies who usually disliked me now watched with looks of disdain. Of course. How could a wildflower growing so freely ever be a match for a priceless porcelain vase? My father considered this for a moment, then said, "Very well, then let it be." "Thank you, father." "Thank you, Emperor." We spoke in unison. It was probably the first time he and I were ever of one mind. Perhaps feeling he owed me, my father ordered that I be allowed to leave the palace and establish my own manor. He also granted me 10,000 taels of gold, 3 pairs of agate rings, 5 sets of Ruware tea sets, and countless other treasures. I wanted to return to my seat, but Adrian Yang grabbed my sleeve. His eyes were just as handsome as I remembered from childhood. I heard him say, "Thank you. There's no need." I shook off his hand and returned to my seat in a daze, a chill spreading through my body. The banquet dragged on until evening. When everyone finally left, I don't know how I managed to step out of that hall. The snow outside was so heavy. The wind whipped the flakes around, and in moments my shoulders were covered. I blinked, and a few snowflakes landed on my eyelashes. I let out a soft breath, a white mist rising before me. "Hey, who are you? What are you doing out here all alone?" The voice startled me. I looked up and saw a man in red emerge from behind a rockery. He was wrapped in a thick white fox fur cloak. He had long, narrow eyes with a striking mole near the outer corner of one. He carried a devil-may-care air, yet he was astonishingly vibrant and passionate. I. Before I could finish, he suddenly leaned in close, propping his chin on his hand and studying me. "Oh, so you're a little stutterer. Little stutterer, aren't you cold out here?" He pointed at my nose, which was red from the cold, then suddenly took my hand. "Your hand is so cold, too." His warm, dry hand enveloped my own, which was frozen like a carrot. For some reason, I suddenly felt an overwhelming urge to cry. He grew anxious. "Hey you, don't cry." I forced my tears back and retorted through a stuffy nose, "I'm not a stutterer." Then, I knew what he wanted to ask. "Princess Isabella." He let out a sudden, awkward laugh, then released my hand and, as if we were old friends, casually slung an arm around my neck. A heartless man isn't worth it. So the news of my broken engagement was already out. The whole capital had probably heard by now. You. Let go, I have to return to the palace. The way we were positioned was highly improper. Everyone said the sixth princess had impeccable manners. In truth, I was envious of my other sisters. They could shamelessly dote on our father and act as they pleased, but I couldn't. I didn't have that privilege. If I hadn't taken a sword for my father when I was 10, I'd probably still be languishing in the cold palace. My mother would often tell me earnestly, "Bella, you must be obedient." I remembered her words for so long that they often replayed in my mind. I heard him click his tongue with a tsk and release me. Boring. It was boring. Someone like me, who always followed the rules, was probably disliked by everyone. I lowered my head. The melting snow on my hair trickled down my forehead, making it look as if I was really crying. A wave of warmth washed over me. I realized he had draped his fox fur cloak over my shoulders. Then, with a stern look, he neatly tied it into a bow. I'll walk you back. He strode ahead, his crimson robes like a blazing flame, vibrant and intense. I took a deep breath and followed close behind him, stepping carefully into the footprints he left in the snow. I later learned that he was the heir of Prince Rui, Julian Wei, whose reputation was known throughout the capital. Not a reputation for talent, but for being a notorious profligate. Cockfighting, dog-walking, cricket fighting, there was no mischief he wouldn't get into. He was a true rebel. I heard a lot of gossip from my fourth sister. She said that one time he went to a cricket fight, and Prince Rui had to drag him home by the ear. Another time, he took his family's prize rooster to the cockfighting pits, got into a fight, and was beaten so badly he couldn't get out of bed for half a month. There were countless stories like that. I had always been closest with Chloe Gu. For her birthday, she invited many guests and sent me an invitation as well. That day, I changed into a pleated skirt of scallion green satin with a delicate floral pattern. I placed a gold butterfly hairpin inlaid with pearls and gems in my hair and carefully concealed the dark circles under my eyes. Even if I'd lost the man, I wouldn't lose my composure. I had to show everyone that I wasn't wasting away because of a broken engagement. It was already late when I arrived. Most of the guests were already there, and Chloe Gu was greeting people at the door. "What took you so long?" Chloe Gu took my arm, chiding me playfully. "I was delayed on the way," I said, taking a box from my maid and presenting it to her like a treasure. "Here, your gift. Happy birthday." "I knew you were the best, Bella." "About Adrian Yang, he?" Chloe realized she'd misspoken and looked at me sheepishly. "Bella?" "It's all right." Seeing that I genuinely didn't mind, she happily took my hand again and whispered in my ear, "I have something fun to tell you later," We passed the screen wall and wound through a covered corridor. Chloe's birthday banquet was being held at the Orchid Pavilion in the Manor's garden. With a glance, I could see clusters of red plum blossom buds, their branches weighed down by heavy snow in a proud image of defiance against the frost. Lady Gu was sitting in the main seat. Seeing me, she quickly stood and curtsied properly. "Greetings, Princess Isabella." I hurried forward to help her up. Isabella is of a younger generation and close to Chloe. "There's no need for such formalities, my lady." She led me to a seat nearby, called for a maid to serve tea, then turned with a smile to the others. "You young people are all gathered today, so I won't disturb you." With the formalities eased, everyone became more lively, and the Orchid Pavilion filled with chatter. Chloe leaned close to me. "You should have been here earlier. It was the first time I've ever seen Veronica Wu get put in her place. It was so satisfying." Veronica Wu was the only daughter of the minister David Wu. Doted on since birth, she had grown into a proud and willful girl who often bullied others. Even I had been the target of her open and veiled criticisms several times. I took a light sip of tea. The fragrant aroma filled my senses and warmed my stomach. "What happened?" Chloe scooted closer, leaning over the small table between us. She kept trying to get close to Adrian Yang, but he blatantly ignored her, not caring about her reputation at all. "She's still fuming over there." That did sound like him. He would never do anything he didn't want to. I glanced over and saw Veronica Wu sitting across from us, twisting her handkerchief so hard it was a wrinkled mess. Adrian Yang was seated far from her, standing beneath a red plum tree. The branches obscured half his face, so I couldn't read his expression, but his posture was tall and straight. No wonder Veronica Wu was so eager to cling to him. Chloe noticed my gaze and took my hand. There are plenty of other fish in the sea, Bella. I'll ask my mother to find you someone even better one day. I suddenly laughed. All right, I'll be waiting. Once the feast began, people stopped sitting so rigidly. Chloe had a servant bring out the items for a game. It was a novel contraption, an iron ring with a channel indented down its middle that resembled a small stream. It was similar to the winding stream floating cups game played in the spring. My father brought this iron winding stream back half a month ago. It's a bit small, but it should work. Everyone knew the rules, so she didn't elaborate. She just instructed a maid to fill the channel with water. Since the iron ring couldn't be like a real winding stream, ordinary wine cups wouldn't work, so she tossed a plum blossom into the water instead. I happened to be sitting directly across from Adrian Yang. It was a little awkward. He was looking down, lost in thought, and the atmosphere felt tense. What are we playing? A defiant voice broke the tension. Chloe hurriedly got up and went to the person, her voice filled with surprise and disbelief. Cousin, what are you doing here? What, am I not welcome? Of course, of course. Chloe nodded her head vigorously like a chick pecking at rice and led him to a seat. I glanced to the side. It was him, Julian Wei. He sat down in Chloe's seat, right next to me. Little stutterer, we meet again, I replied with a slightly perfunctory, I trust you've been well, and then ignored him. He didn't seem to mind. He just cocked his leg up improperly and idly picked at the carved bird and flower patterns on the wine cup before him. First round. The plum blossom stopped right in front of Julian Wei. Chloe gave him a mischievous look. Answer a question, compose a poem, or drink the wine in your cup. Cousin, which will you choose? Answer a question. Has anything good happened to you recently, cousin? He mused for a moment. If I said I recovered something I'd lost, would that count? Of course it counts. But what was it you lost? That would be a second question. Julian Wei glanced at her. Then his gaze returned to the patterns on his cup. Second round. As luck would have it, the blossom stopped in front of me. I'll answer a question. This time it was Veronica Wu's turn to ask. She was aggressive, and her question was pointed. Does Princess Isabella regret breaking her engagement with General Yang? As soon as she spoke, a dead silence fell over the group. I stole a glance at Adrian Yang. He happened to look up, and our eyes met. I guiltily looked away. Seeing my hesitation, she reminded me, if you can't answer, you have to accept the penalty and drink all the wine in front of you. Ever since I took that sword for my father, I'd been left with a chronic illness and couldn't touch alcohol. But now I was in an impossible situation. My hand trembled as I reached for the cup, my mind already racing. I'll drink it and go straight back to the palace to find Physician Chen. A long, slender hand, as smooth as warm jade, intercepted mine and took the cup from me. I'll drink for her. He downed it in one go. I saw clearly that Julian Wei shot me a look, as if disappointed in my weakness. Hidden from everyone's view beneath the table, he took my left hand. His cool fingertips traced something on my palm, sending a ticklish sensation through me. He left behind 4 words. Follow your heart's desire. I suddenly felt that, despite his terrible reputation, he was a remarkably insightful person. Hiss. A sharp intake of breath came from across the table. It was Adrian Yang. He had accidentally knocked over his teacup and the scalding water had spilled all over him. His entire hand had turned red. As the host, Chloe naturally had to ensure her guest's safety. Are you all right? It's nothing, he said through gritted teeth. His eyes were red from holding back the pain, but his face and lips were unnaturally pale. Lily, quickly take Master Yang to a side hall to change his clothes. Adrian Yang stood up and glanced back at me. I could feel his gaze on me, but I knew that what was past was past. No matter how much I might wish otherwise, there was no possibility for us. It was better to extinguish that little spark of hope myself. He only looked for a moment, then followed the maid out. After that incident, the remaining guests lost the mood to play. They stayed a little longer, then made excuses about needing to get home and left in a hurry. After seeing off her guests, Chloe finally had time for Julian Wei and me. She caught her breath and said, "Today was so tiring. You should go get some rest, Chloe. The palace carriage will be here soon." "All right then." She turned to Julian Wei. "Cousin, You look after Bella. Make sure nothing happens. I know. A long silence followed. I cleared my throat to break the quiet. Today, thank you. Julian Y was still smiling that roguish smile. How will you thank me? I truly hadn't expected him to ask such a question. I had no choice but to say, with a pained heart, I'll treat you to a meal at Fred's restaurant another day. The world was still a vast expanse of white. In the distance, the wheels of a carriage creaked as they rolled over the snow, leaving long tracks in their wake. The carriage is here. I should go. Wait. He reached out and grabbed my sleeve. It's freezing out. You should wear thicker clothes from now on. Thank you. I nodded. Once in the carriage, I lifted the side curtain. Julian Y was still standing by the stone lion, his breath plumed in the cold air as he said with all seriousness, Little stutterer, I hope you remember what I said today. Don't worry too much about things you don't like. Just 2 words of advice are all you need. Follow your heart. His eyes were bright, his pupils dark and so clear they seemed to hold no distracting thoughts. A strange sense of gratitude rose in me, and I nodded firmly. When he saw that, he burst into a hearty laugh, returning to his usual untamed self as he watched the carriage depart. The new year was fast approaching, and another heavy snow fell upon the capital. Although the snow outside was already knee-deep when I woke the next day, the palace was still bustling with activity. On New Year's Eve, I sent word to the Empress early, pleading illness to avoid the evening banquet. The charcoal fire in my room burned brightly, and I snuggled under the brocade quilt, unwilling to get up. In the outer room, Matron Shen and Ivy were sewing small lucky pouches for the New Year's vigil. Listening to the soft sound of the falling snow outside, I felt a wave of restlessness. Matron, what time is it? It's 9:45, Princess. After some thought, I decided to get up and join them in sewing the lucky pouches. The winters in the capital were always long and cold. It wasn't until the second month that the ice broke and spring returned. I was swinging back and forth on a swing set against the courtyard wall. The apricot blossoms were showing tiny green buds. Suddenly, a figure appeared atop the wall, their hair tied in a high ponytail with a red ribbon, looking around furtively. The person revealed a pair of eyes and asked in surprise, Hey, what are you doing here? You've got some nerve, Julian, daring to climb the palace walls. He gave an awkward laugh and turned it back on me. You're one to talk. You promised to treat me to Fred's restaurant. It's been 2 months and you still haven't made good on it. The creditor had to come calling in person. Julian nimbly flipped over to sit on the wall, then jumped down cleanly. He suddenly pulled me into a corner and covered my mouth. Matron Shen's voice came from nearby. That's strange. I was sure I heard a noise just now. He only let go after the footsteps faded away. Aren't you afraid of being punished for trespassing in the palace, Julian? Only heaven, earth, you and I know. As long as you don't tell, who's to know? He said, tilting his head smugly, arms crossed. Tsk, he's got it all figured out, hasn't he? It's the flower festival. It's really lively outside. Wanna go? He plopped down on the swing I had just been on, making the wooden frame wobble. Don't you break my swing. To be fair, the swing was quite small. He looked very cramped sitting on it, a completely bewildered expression on his face. Fine, let's go. I was about to grow mold from being cooped up in the palace anyway. It was a good day to get out. I just didn't expect that when Julian said he'd take me out, he meant we would be climbing the wall out together. Julian, can't you get any higher? I can't reach. Hitching up my skirt, I struggled to stretch my arm upward, but I just couldn't reach the protruding brick on top of the wall. The palace walls were so high, I had no idea how he'd managed to climb up just now. He was muttering something below me. I strained my ears but could only make out a few faint words. Just stand a little more on your toes. Then you have to promise I won't fall. From this height, if I fell, I'd be stuck in bed for a week or 2. I couldn't help but wonder, would I be the first princess in this dynasty to fall off a wall? All right, I promise. For goodness sake, hurry up. I can't hold on much longer. I gritted my teeth and steeled myself. Tiptoeing, I pushed off from his shoulders to launch myself upward and finally managed to grab hold of the high wall. Now the situation was completely reversed. I was sitting on top of the wall and he was standing below. That was way too hard. Wait for me. Julian wiped the sweat from his forehead, and with a light push-off, he was soon sitting on the wall next to me. He grinned proudly. See? Fun, right? I pouted, in no mood to humor him. Climbing a wall wasn't fun in the slightest. I had no idea why he enjoyed it so much. Let's go. He flipped over and landed smoothly on the other side, calling for me to jump down quickly. I glanced down, and a wave of dizziness washed over me. I hadn't realized it when I was climbing up, but now I saw the wall was even higher from this side. I don't dare. My voice trembled as I spoke. It's okay, I'll catch you. Julian stood with his arms crossed, his clear eyes glinting in the sunlight. His red hair ribbon was a little dusty, which looked slightly comical, but I was in no mood to laugh at him. I looked down again, then immediately shut my eyes and pulled back, feeling as if the ground below was swaying. If you don't come down, I'm really leaving. He drew out his words, then turned and patted the wrinkles and dust from his clothes, pretending to walk away. Hey, don't go! Seeing he had no intention of stopping, I panicked. Forgetting the consequences, I braced myself, closed my eyes, and jumped. The pain I expected never came. Instead, I fell into a warm embrace. I could hear soft breathing by my ear, and the sweet scent of peaches that clung to him flooded my senses. I told you I'd catch you. I don't know what I was thinking, but without a thought, I asked a terribly bold question. Julian, what fragrance are you wearing? As soon as the question was out, he seemed a bit stunned. I immediately backtracked. I didn't ask anything. Never mind. The flower festival was the birthday of all flowers. On this day, the young men and women of the capital would go out together to enjoy the blossoms and then worship the flora goddess at the Flora Temple. Scholars and poets would gather to admire the scenery, drink wine, and compose poetry. Julian and I wandered the streets, where little girls selling flowers called out, "Beautiful fresh flowers." Weren't you in a hurry to get to Fred's restaurant? Why are we wandering around? I couldn't help but ask, noticing we were straying further and further away, even heading in the opposite direction. Since someone is so eager to treat me to a meal, it would be rude to refuse. Fred's restaurant was a thriving business, the most famous restaurant in the capital, and a place where the daughters of officials often gathered. The waiter's face was scrunched in apology. Miss, it's not that we don't want to help, but there really are no private rooms left upstairs. Why don't you wait here for a moment, and I'll go ask again. Julian leaned against the wall, his expression unreadable in the backlight. I had no choice but to nod. The waiter scurried up to the second floor. When he finally returned, a look of delight was on his face. Miss, if you don't mind, a guest upstairs is willing to share a table. Getting out today hadn't been easy, and I didn't know when I'd have another chance. After a moment's thought, I decided to ask Julian for his opinion. He glanced over and gave a hesitant nod. The second floor was clean and elegant. The waiter led us to the innermost room, where a fierce-looking guard stood at the door. He looked familiar, but I couldn't quite place where I had seen him before. Pushing open the door and parting the milky white gauze curtain, we saw a single guest sitting inside. He turned his head slightly at the sound, and I finally saw that very familiar face, Adrian Yang. I never thought we'd run into him like this. Julian's face immediately fell. Today, Adrian wore a moon-white robe of Sichuan brocade with a scrolling vine pattern, a crescent-shaped jade pendant hanging from his waist. He was the very picture of a modest gentleman, a world of difference from his usual plain, unadorned black attire. It's you? Julian's tone was aggressive, utterly devoid of courtesy. He clearly didn't like Adrian. The waiter heard this and immediately tried to smooth things over. You all know each other? What a coincidence. With that, he backed out of the room and closed the door behind him. A pleasure to see you, Julian, Adrian said, ignoring the hostility in the other man's voice. He just smiled warmly, then turned to me. I hope you have been well, Princess. Although I had resolved to draw a clear line with him, I was still resentful. If he hadn't broken off the engagement in public, I wouldn't have become a laughingstock. Now, caught in a dilemma, I was sitting on pins and needles, unable to stay and unable to leave. I am perfectly well. Thank you for your concern, General Yang. Julian calmed down, tugged on my sleeve, and asked in a low voice with a raised eyebrow, What do you want to eat, Bella? I'm treating you today, so of course, It's whatever you like. Julian went to find the waiter, and suddenly, only Adrian and I were left in the room. The room overlooked the street, and with the window open, I could easily hear the clamor of the vendors below. Feeling uneasy, I emptied my mind and listened intently to the noise. Silence fell between us. He poured a cup of tea and pushed it in front of me. "Bella, I am sorry." "Is that useful?" I glanced at him and couldn't help but let out a bitter laugh. No wonder my mother always said that an apology was the most useless thing in the world. It couldn't take back what was done, nor could it make up for anything. In the end, it was just an empty phrase. But it's for the best. Parting on good terms is better than growing to resent each other later on. So, in that sense, there is some benefit to it. His hand, resting on the teacup, flinched. His brow furrowed and then slowly relaxed. The corners of his lips curved into a weak smile, revealing a hint of heartbreak. A surge of anger rose in me for no reason. His expression made it seem as if I were the one in the wrong. I still remember the first time I met Adrian Yang. It was a clear spring day, a day of new life, new grass, and singing birds. The weather was perfect, and I had woken up early wanting to fly a kite. The spring wind was strong, and before the kite could fly very high, the string snapped. By the time I chased it to where it had fallen, he was the only one there. The peach blossoms were brilliant, dazzling under the warm sun. He was lying on a branch of a peach tree in the southwest corner of the Imperial Garden, one leg crossed over the other. A yellow, dog-eared copy of the Book of Songs covered his face. His thick, dark hair hung down slightly, suspended in midair. He was clutching my colorful kite, its broken string tangled messily. As if sensing my presence, he lifted the book, his half-closed eyes slowly opening. They were a pair of strikingly beautiful eyes, slightly upturned, gorgeous yet aloof. In the sunlight, his pupils were a brownish red, like translucent amber. "That's my kite." He said nothing, simply tossed the kite to me, then bent down to pick up the book from under the tree. I glanced at it. The page was open to "The Peach Tree Tender." I had seen this poem on a painting in my father's palace. The peach tree is young and tender, how brilliant are its flowers. This maiden goes to her future home, and she will order her house just right. An inexplicable flutter rose in my heart. After that, I waited eagerly every day, standing alone at the entrance of the Imperial Academy for him to finish his lessons. But he would only walk past me as if I were a stranger. I thought he was unhappy because he'd been reprimanded by his tutor. I gave him a brocade pouch that I had pricked my fingers countless times to embroider, only to have it heartlessly discarded. I thought my craftsmanship was too poor. I walked all the way up Cloudy Mountain, performing the full kowtow at the Grand Chancellor Temple to pray for him, wishing for his swift victory over the enemy and his safe return. I naively believed that once he returned, my wishes would come true, and we could be together forever. After all, he himself had agreed to the engagement. But I never, ever imagined that he would be unwilling, that he would refuse me in public. Even now, this was the one and only time he had called me Bella, and it was under such circumstances. I just felt pathetic. Julian was right. Adrian wasn't worth it. I took a deep breath, forcing down the turmoil in my chest and downed a mouthful of tea. Year after year, the flowers are the same, but year after year, the people are different. The world had stayed the same, but the people had changed. Adrian Yang, I wish for us to be like stars that never cross paths again. From now on, we have nothing to do with each other. I stood up and took 2 steps back. Without another glance at him, I pushed the door open and left. The fierce-looking guard outside looked up at me, then lowered his gaze, silently making way for me. In a daze, I thought I heard the sound of porcelain shattering on the floor. Maybe it was real, or maybe I had just imagined it. But what did that have to do with me anymore? Julian came over from the staircase, a confused look on his face. "Why did you come out?" "I don't really feel like eating anymore. Julian, I'll treat you another day." I clutched his sleeve, wrinkling the smooth brocade. "I want to go back." "All right, I'll take you home." He gently pulled his sleeve from my hand, took my arm, and asked no more questions. It had been over half a year since Adrian Yang publicly broke off our engagement, and the Princess Manor my father, the Emperor, had built for me outside the palace was now complete. I left the Imperial Palace and moved into the Princess Manor on Water Street. The manor is surrounded by the homes of scholars and artists, so it's usually very quiet. But sometimes I can hear my neighbors drinking and toasting the moon, which adds a certain charm to the place. The air was thick with burning incense to ward off the summer heat. At dawn, sparrows chattered under the eaves, heralding a clear day. Ivy had the manor's pond filled with lotus flowers. When the wind blew, beads of water would roll across the lotus leaves, sending ripples across the pond's surface. I was lounging on a chaise in the pavilion at the center of the pond, toying with a silk fan. A breeze carrying the scent of lotuses drifted by. Without the lofty palace walls to hinder him, it was even easier for Julian to sneak in by scaling the manor walls. I wasn't even surprised anymore. As for his entrances, words fail me. On the very first day I moved in, he'd scaled the wall into the back courtyard, landing right by the kitchens. He ended up being chased relentlessly by a rooster kept there and was soon covered in chicken feathers. Even his normally immaculate hair was a mess, with a colorful tail feather stuck right in the middle of it. "Bella, that rooster of yours is quite something." I forced myself not to laugh, but in the end, I couldn't hold it in and burst out laughing until my stomach ached. He shot me a mournful glare, then deadpanned, "Give it to me. I'll train it for the cockfighting pits. I bet it could become an undefeated champion." Thinking of that, I couldn't help but laugh again. A few drops of water landed unexpectedly on my forehead. I sat up, puzzled, but saw nothing out of the ordinary. Just as I was about to lie back down, the surface of the pond rippled violently, and Julian burst out, his head and neck breaking the water. His right arm was still clinging to the pavilion's wooden railing. His entrances? They truly defied description. I really shouldn't have expected anything different. He had a giant broken-stemmed lotus leaf on his head, making it look as if he were wearing a green hat. "Bella, I've arrived." The corners of my mouth twitched, but I ignored him. He fumbled around in the water with his left hand, and then, as if presenting a treasure, held up a handful of lotus pods. They were fresh and green, dotted with beads of water, looking incredibly tender. "For you," he said, his expression clearly expecting praise. I took the lotus pods from him and placed them on the table next to my chaise. He remained in the water, not moving. "Aren't you coming up?" I prompted, feigning nonchalance. Julian flashed a mischievous grin, which he quickly replaced with a pitiful one. "I went to all this trouble to pick lotus pods for you, Bella, and you're not even going to help me up?" Though I knew he was just pretending, on some strange impulse, I extended my hand to him. The moment I grasped it, a refreshing coolness spread through my palm, soothing the sweltering summer heat. He used my hand and the railing to vault into the pavilion, splashing water everywhere. His dark, close-fitting clothes were soaked, clinging to his body and clearly outlining the lean muscles beneath. I discreetly looked away and tossed him a plain cloak. "Hurry and wrap this around yourself so you don't catch a cold," I said, my voice a bit stiff. "Thank you, Bella," he replied smoothly, then plopped down right next to me on the chaise, squeezing me to one side. My sleeves were getting damp. I gave him a light shove. "Move over. You're getting my clothes all wet." "I'm taking you somewhere fun," he whispered in my ear, his eyes twinkling mischievously. "Well, you should at least change your clothes first." He sighed dramatically, wiping the dripping water from his hair. "Ugh, what a hassle." After finding a couple of plain men's outfits in the manor for him to change into, he took me to a nondescript little building on Golden Street in the west of the city. Just as we were about to enter, he stopped me. "Wear this." He wrapped a white silk scarf around my face, leaving only my eyes and forehead exposed. "But I'm dressed as a man." What kind of disguise is this? I knew it was common for women in our dynasty to cover their faces with scarves when they went out, but since I was dressed as a man, this felt like a dead giveaway. "Just wear it," he said, pulling me by the hand through the building's main door. The moment we stepped inside, a wave of stale air hit me. The room was dim, the candles flickering in the draught. I could hear a commotion from upstairs. "Hey, nice one." "That one's no good." Phrases like these drifted down to my ears now and then. I moved closer to Julian and asked in a low voice, "What is this place?" He answered matter-of-factly, "A cockfighting pit." "What? A cockfighting pit? Why did you bring me here?" "I don't know anything about this. To get you acquainted." After that cryptic remark, he said no more and just led me upstairs. A group of people were gathered in a circle. Some were dancing with joy, while others sighed in frustration, their faces twisted into sour expressions. "Julian Way, you're finally here. We haven't seen you in months. I thought you'd turned over a new leaf." A man in black robes, with a scar slashing from the corner of his eye down his cheek, stepped out of the crowd. He was an intimidating figure, and I couldn't help but clutch Julian's hand tightly. He gently rubbed my fingertips, silently reassuring me. "And who is this?" The man in black shifted his gaze to me, staring for a long moment before speaking. There was a rumor going around that Julian Y prefers the company of men. Could it be true? But what I can't figure out is why this young gentleman is covering his face. Is he unwilling to show himself? "Boss Fu, you have quite the sense of humor," Julian said, breaking into a smile. "All right, stop teasing her." The tense atmosphere vanished. "Just a joke. Don't take it to heart, young gentleman." The man, Boss Fu, bowed to me. His fierce face now seemed strangely kind. I was completely bewildered. I could only trail behind Julian like his shadow, following wherever he went. In the center of the crowd was a sunken circular ring. Two magnificent roosters were fighting wildly inside, sending feathers flying into the air before they drifted back down. The floor was littered with colorful tail feathers, but no one paid them any mind. They just stared intently at the two roosters in the ring, their eyes fixed and unblinking. I looked over and saw that the rooster on the right was smaller and already covered in wounds. Raw, red flesh was visible at the base of its wings, and blood dripped from the wounds, matting its feathers into dark clots. The other rooster, the one with a white string tied to its leg, was circling its opponent triumphantly, letting out an occasional guttural crow from its throat. "Bella, which one do you think will win?" "The one with the white string tied to its leg." Julian gave me a sidelong glance, then grinned. "I have a feeling it's going to be the other one." "Is that so? Well, let's see then." The injured rooster was a fighter, to be sure, but it could barely muster any strength now. Although the smaller rooster's beady eyes were sharp and its kicks surprisingly powerful, I decided it was a lost cause. I didn't think it had any chance of a comeback. The two roosters fought ferociously in the ring while the crowd murmured among themselves. Suddenly, we heard hurried footsteps as shoes clattered on the wooden floor. A servant from the cockfighting pit leaned in close to Boss Fu's ear and whispered something. After getting a nod, he scurried over to Julian. "Lord Wei, Prince Rui is here. I suppose he's looking for you again?" The people around us chuckled teasingly. "You'd better slip away, Lord Wei, unless you want to be beaten so badly you can't get out of bed for half a month." I peered out the window and saw Prince Rui in his black iron armor, striding our way. The sunlight glinted off his armor. His hair was tied back completely, and his expression was grim, daring anyone to interfere. In his hand, he tightly gripped a barbed whip. Without another word, Julian grabbed my wrist, and we slipped out a side door. I thought that would be the end of it, but Prince Rui was incredibly fast. In just a moment, he was on our tail, his gruff voice thick with anger. "You brat, what new young master are you corrupting now? Stop right there." With his furious shouts behind us, passers-by turned to stare, but they quickly looked away with an air of understanding. They had probably seen this scene many times before, so it was nothing new to them. Julian led me on a winding chase from Golden Street, across two other streets to Water Street, and finally into a hidden alley. Finally able to rest, I panted for a long while before I could speak. "Julian Wei, I'd say we've now been through a life-and-death experience together. If Prince Rui had caught us, word of me being at a cockfighting pit would have probably reached my father. Things wouldn't have been so simple then. If we share a life-and-death bond, then why are you still so formal, Bella?" he asked, his eyes staring intently into mine, which made me feel a little flustered. "And what would be less formal?" He stroked his chin thoughtfully for a moment before saying with great seriousness, "For example, you could call me Julian." "Julian, what are you doing?" I yelped, startled. He ignored me and lowered his head, resting his chin on my shoulder and muttering, "Just for a little while. I'm so tired." "Just for a moment," I stammered, holding up one finger in front of him. Julian's warm breath brushed against my neck, sending a shiver through me. My skin broke out in goosebumps and my ears grew hot. I could faintly feel his chest vibrating as if he were trying to suppress a laugh, followed by a low chuckle. Bella, you get shy so easily. Scoundrel. I shoved him away forcefully, pulled the scarf from my face, and tossed it at him. Hey, don't walk so fast. Bella, I was wrong, okay? I was wrong. Wait for me.